I'm Aaron Gatch. I'm co-founder and director of operations for the Center for Tactical Magic, which I've been organizing since 2000. And what the Center for Tactical Magic does is produce a range of artworks that are almost always collaborative in nature, and they deal with themes of magic as they relate to other disciplines, as well as current events, social issues, activism, politics, and emergent technologies. So for the Center for Tactical Magic, there's always a couple of key priorities, and one of those priorities is some degree of audience interaction, audience participation, or audience collaboration in order to produce the work. And the way that we go about structuring projects are usually site-specific or context-specific, or maybe specific to an issue that's emerging, a political issue perhaps, or community issue that it deserves being addressed. And from a traditional arts perspective, kind of contemporary arts framework, one of the ways that we think about what we do and how that relates to contemporary arts is if you think about kind of the longer historical trajectory of art making within the Western tradition in particular, the idea of making a painting or a drawing is that at the core of that there's a kind of magical moment that happens. The artist has to start with an abstract idea that's bouncing across the gray matter of their brain that they're looking to manifest in the world around them, and that act of finding materials and transforming materials to manifest your vision in reality is essentially a magical act to begin with. And it goes all the way back to cave painting, if you want to take it that far. But it follows through with a lot of other artwork. One of the differences, one of the departures with what we do from what a lot of other more traditional art practices does is that we're, in many instances, less interested in asserting our vision upon an audience as much as facilitating the visionary process for the audience. So if you think about a painting as the artist's vision presented for an audience, what we're more interested in doing is creating a set of circumstances or creating a context in which the audience begins to have their own creative processes unleashed.
All right. So how do you situate your practice then within this emerging field of social practice or relational art?
I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the term social practice. For one thing, I think that I understand that the term practice comes out of the idea of a professional practice, but if we think about practice also in relation to really any other kind of activity, hobbies, or sports, the idea is that at a certain point you have to stop practicing and actually play the game. So for one thing, I think that sure, practice is good, that's what your studio is for, but for socially engaged art to be really activated, it shouldn't just be about practice. On the other hand, maybe what I love about the term social practice is that it doesn't use the term art anywhere in the phrase. And what I hate about the term social practice is that it doesn't use the term art anywhere within that phrase. And there's a really complicated relationship there. On the one hand, I think social practice or socially engaged art or relational art is really trying to look at ways of creatively intersecting culture and society, and that it brings a certain level of sincerity and conviction and integrity in applying creative skills to real-world situations. Do you need to call that art and all of the baggage that goes along with that term art? Maybe not. But on the other hand, by not using the term art, I think it becomes very, very confusing for a lot of people who don't speak contemporary art discourse, right? So it's a complicated term, ultimately, I think what's really positive to take away from socially engaged art or social practice or relational aesthetic or contextual art or convergent media practices or arts in context or whatever kind of moniker you want to hang on it is that artists working in those fields are really starting to consider both the power of art and the ability to counter things like alienation and disempowerment or lack of agency or really just life as we're sold it is.
Yeah, so to close out the interview, could you describe one of your recent projects?
Sure. Sorry, I kind of skipped over that. Well, there's a number of different projects we're working on. The most recent one is a project called the Bank Heist Contest that offers a $1,000 prize for the best bank proposal that somebody has come up with and submitted. And within the context of that project, there's several different components. There's an installation component, there's a public programming component, there's a performance component, and then there's the contest itself, which on one level is kind of a crowdsourced project, meaning that the submissions are really producing the bulk of the work. For me, like I was saying earlier, what's most interesting about this project is not only that it speaks to the current economic climate and all of the banking scandals and the kind of iconic American cultural tradition of looking at bank robbers like Billy the Kid or Dillinger, but really that even the suggestion of a bank heist contest, that you could win $1,000 for planning a bank heist, not for executing it, but for planning it, that already plants a seed in people's minds. And since we started this project, I've run into numerous people who have told me, I can't stop thinking about how I would go about robbing a bank. And that's really where the art happens within a kind of socially engaged context. That you're planting a seed not to go and do the activity, but to shift someone's perception or thinking around a set of issues.